Chapters 4 to 6 leave me with way too many questions, but not the kind of questions that the book wants you to ask, I think. Hi folks, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kat, and this time we'll talk about chapter 4 to 6 from A Court of Thorns and Roses. And I keep wanting to say this title the wrong way around, like Rose and Thorns instead of Thorns and Roses, but oh well. Chapter 3 ended on a somewhat exciting note with a beast busting down the door and attacking the family. Now we learn it's not a Martax, it's not a bear-lion hybrid, but something else. Feyre describes, but I've already forgotten, but possibly more wolf or cat-like than bear or lion, but clearly a beast, and clearly not just a beast either, because it shows intelligence and it also accuses people in there of murder, so we're definitely talking to a high fae here. I have to say I admire that Feyre is ready to fight this beast, even though at this point it's very clear that she's looking at a high fae and she should stand no chance whatsoever with what she said about the species before. But she's willing to try to protect her sisters. Not that they deserve it, but she's gonna try anyway. I do have to wonder, this creature comes in and asks who killed his friend. And just by looking at the room, it should be fairly obvious. There are like two girls cowering on the floor and a guy in tears next to them, and one girl in front of him with a knife, clearly ready to fight him. It's like, well, which one of them would have the balls to kill a wolf the size of your friend? Difficult. As a random side note, we learned that fairies can't lie. I'm not sure how humans have established this or whether it's actually true. But as far as Feyre knows, fairies can't lie. Clearly fairies know that people are perfectly capable of lying, because the creature accuses Feyre of lying and assumes that one of the three people cowering behind her killed his friend instead. And it's like, not very likely, is it? I mean, two of them are crying, one of them is shrieking, and they're just cowering on the floor. They don't seem like that much competition between the four people in the house. Like, who could have killed this wolf? Feyre shows some not so nice traits, really. She says that she would have killed this wolf even if she had definitely known she was looking at a faerie or high fae, just because their kind has done so many cruel things to human beings, and she would have killed him anyway if she had gotten the chance. She still hasn't seen any of those cruelties herself. Some of them might be historical fact. So let's say history is true in that regard, and the high fae kept slaves, and there was a good reason you wanted to get rid of them. Sure. But Feyre herself has not seen any of those cruelties, and the wolf that she slayed in the forest might not have been involved at all either. So the hatefulness she shows there is not really great on the main character. Apparently the treaty demands a life for a life, so Feyre's life is now in the hands of this creature, which then again makes me question if this treaty is so important to the high fae and fairies. Why would there be a Martax out there slaughtering a whole village out of nowhere? So Feyre can choose whether she wants to be killed outside the house or go live in Prythian for the rest of her life. Seems like a fairly easy choice for me, but you know, Feyre contemplates this for a second and then decides that she will go with this creature, even though this would constitute breaking her promise to her mom for taking care of her sisters. But she figures if she already has to break an oath, then she would rather break the promise she's now giving this creature to then return home and take care of her family again. She considers killing this creature first chance she gets. Charming, once again. And then we get to see an absolute marvel in dexterity, I think, because the creature goes, sniffs the quivers, takes out the ashwood arrow, snaps it in half, and throws it into the fire. Is he doing it with his snout or his paws? Because I don't think either is really suited for this kind of move. Feyre leaves her father with some instructions as to which part of the meat to eat first, what to sell, and where to hunt. I don't see any of them being capable of doing what she's telling them to anyway. So once Feyre is gone, they are probably screwed anyway. Anyway, her dad leaves her with what I think is a fairly shitty goodbye. He tells her that she has always been too good for them and has always been so much better than anybody else. I'm just here like, if you think your daughter is so great, then why have you not told your other kids to try and live up to her potential or to her example? And why have you yourself not worked harder to live up to this? Instead, you just wait until your kid is pretty much gone for good and you tell her, oh yeah, you're so much better than the rest of us. This is pretty rubbish. Feyre and the creature, we still don't have a name, set out on their travel through the forest. The creature kindly brought a horse. I'm not sure why. I mean, later it becomes clear, but in this chapter I was just like, why did this creature bring a horse with it? I don't get it, but never mind. There is a perfectly docile horse waiting for Feyre, so she doesn't have to walk all this way. Yay! And while they travel through the forest, we learn that the secret to the human uprising against the High Fae was literally Ashwood. The fact that it's a weakness for the High Fae and faeries, I guess for both. I'm still not quite clear on the distinction there, but I guess for both of them. But we also learn that the abilities of High Fae include such fun things like leveling buildings, breaking up whole armies, and killing you before you can blink. And it's like, and you're telling me that all you needed to rise up to this is Ashwood? Also, while they're traveling, Feyre keeps looking for ash trees because apparently she does know what they look like. Well, I don't, but you know, she does. Which then makes me wonder if these actually grow in the forest that you constantly go hunting in. Why would you only own a single Ashwood arrow? We get some more background info, you know. Feyre tells you that she knows virtually nothing about High Fae, you know, except that they're cruel and you need to murder them at every opportunity. But she knows virtually nothing. Except, and then she starts talking about their abilities, their appetites, what they like doing, and their government structure. So she clearly knows that there are 7 High Lords behind the wall in Prythian, and I'm just like, this is stuff you know? It seems a very strange thing to know. Especially for somebody who says they know nothing. Feyre also contemplates the shitty piece of land that the High Faes left for the human beings after their uprising. And then questions why people even stayed there. Why did nobody leave? Well, yeah, why didn't you? I mean, your family had money before. You could have gotten on a ship and sold it off. But you didn't, so why are you questioning why all the people that are significantly poorer than you ever stayed there? Feyre shows another quality that is not particularly nice, but understandable at least. She actually feels some glee that her family will now be in real trouble and finally understand how important she is. But then she's also torn because, well, my family is now screwed without me. It's like, yeah. It's not a particularly nice thing to think, but given the way that her family treated her beforehand, can't say I blame her either. When the beast busted down the door, I thought we would be in for some action, but it didn't last long and the pace is still quite slow. But while riding along, Feyre gets knocked out by magic and wakes up apparently 2 days later in the creature's estate. And the creature still hasn't turned back to a High Fae. We're still traveling on 4 paws. Feyre looks at the apparently very nice estate that she's now in and instantly considers running. But then figures, ooh, I feel a bit weak in the knees. I guess it's 2 days of no food. Maybe I need to go grab something before I try to escape first. Okay, so she goes inside and there's a whole banquet laid out for her. And she decides not to eat any of it because in the stories, if you accept food or drink from a faerie, they can enslave you. Which then again brings up many more questions. So if the treaty forbids them from enslaving anybody, then why would eating or drinking anything they give you have this effect if it's clearly against the treaty? And as we've seen with this High Fae, they actually care about the treaty, you know, unlike Feyre, for instance. And then the next question is, you better hope that none of this food is conjured up by magic and that the food in the kitchen doesn't count as his either, because either you will not find any food in the house, or it will count as taking something that's his anyway, and then it would have the same effect as when you take it from the banquet table. Or maybe Feyre will just go outside and eat a tree. I don't know. Maybe there's something growing in the gardens, but then again, that would be the creatures stuff, and you know, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense to me. The creature finally turns back into his high fae form, and Feyre reacts super surprised, like startling and moving backwards. It's like, ah, help. And it's like, you already knew what you were dealing with. You knew this was a person disguised as a creature, so why the hell are you so surprised? Right after this, she thinks about running again. She still hasn't eaten anything and she still feels as weak as before, but oh my god, this high fae has turned back into like person shape. It's like, wow, better run instantly. It's like, woman, can you just make up your mind maybe? Now this part actually amused me, but probably for all the wrong reasons. So another fae turns up, and he's clearly upset about the death of huntress, which we now learn is the wolf's name. And then he looks at Feyre after being told, yeah, this girl killed him. He's like, this scrawny thing managed to kill him? And Feyre instantly gets super pissed off and is ready to murder this guy over this comment. And I'm just left here to wonder why. If she's on the verge of starvation, then obviously she's scrawny. That's an objectively true statement, but she takes it so personally that she's ready to murder the next person over it. And you're over here like, what the fuck, woman? What the fuck? Yeah, I can't tell whether she's upset that he called her scrawny or a thing, or that he was surprised that she even managed to kill anything, or maybe Feyre just likes killing a bit too much. But it's good to see that Feyre hasn't left everything from her rich past life behind, because she instantly judges their fashion sense. Both of them are wearing masks, and she calls it absurd, and it's like, okay, you're wearing tatters, and even if this was absurd fashion, is this really the moment to wonder about this kind of crap? Feyre really isn't good at the social stuff, is she? So Lucian pays her a fairly fake compliment, which I actually found hilarious. At least there's some shade in there coming from somebody. And then the creature, I think we still don't have a name, tells her that she could really use a bath and fresh clothes, and Feyre can't decide whether she should be insulted or not. Woman, you've just spent 2 days, likely 2 days, unconscious on horseback. I'm pretty sure anybody would want a bath and new clothes after that. Feyre decides that she can play along with all the things, and then she will get the better of these guys eventually, because clearly they care about appearances, although I think there's still a big gap between you want somebody to be clean and properly dressed and being actually vain. But Feyre thinks they are all vain and superficial now, and that's why she can get the better of them. And no, that's not how that works. Just because they are vain or they like fashion doesn't make them stupid or easy to fool. We get a hint of political intrigue or background in the conversation between the master of the estate and Lucian, but it's not an awful lot to go on yet, and I would have liked to see more of that, but I expect it will happen soon. And then after some more conversation, Feyre finally decides, oh, maybe I don't know as much about high fae as I thought I did. But don't worry, this hint of reason doesn't last long. She just goes back to, I need to murder people, I need to flee, and blah blah. Feyre gets her bath and refuses to wear the dress that has been put out for her. And then she gets snippy with the servant that has been sent along to help her. And you have to wonder why. What good is it going to do if you annoy this other person as well? I'm still not quite certain whether Alice is another human that lives there, or possibly, I think, a faerie, but I'm not quite clear on that. Assume she's a faerie. The more people you piss off, the harder you make your flight from this place. But yeah, Feyre is really not much of a social creature. So all that happened in those 3 chapters is Feyre showing us that while she's a bit more of an interesting character than initially thought, she's also not a particularly nice character. But nothing much happens really. It's like 3 chapters and all she does is travel to this place and look around, get a bath and be snippy to people. Maybe the actual story will start now though. Sure would be nice. Like I said in the intro, I have many more questions, and most of them relate to world building. The characters here are not massively interesting either. The creature seems to be exceptionally reasonable and forgiving, given that he turned up to murder her for killing his friend and then just takes her home with him instead. And if she doesn't even have to work for him, then you just got yourself somebody who eats all of your food and lives at your house for free. And this is how the treaty values a high fae's life or faerie's life. That seems like a very strange concept. And generally speaking, it just seems like a very contrived way to set up those people living in the same house together, so the romance that is bound to happen eventually can happen. It seems very weird. Pacing is still a bit too slow, too many questions, characters not particularly interesting, no hint of romance yet either, not really anyway, but a very vague hint of political intrigue that I'm far more interested in than in any of the other stuff. I'll be back next week with another video. Like and subscribe if you want to help the channel out, and let me know whether you've read this book and what you made of it. Thanks so much for watching. Bye folks!